All right, welcome to just a May 2023 garden intro update walkthrough of my little backyard 400 square foot veggie garden. And I'm just going to start the tour here with the main event of any spring and summer garden, tomatoes. All right, so first up, I have our cherry varieties, indeterminate, all are indeterminate. So this year I'm growing them up a stake, a long stake, about 8 feet, that links up to a taut cable. And the idea is this is the first year where I'm actually going to be pruning our tomatoes more aggressively. In years past, I didn't prune any of our indeterminate tomatoes, and we wound up with kind of what could be described as a impenetrable tomato hedge. Um, and which is great, a lot of production, but it made it almost impossible to kind of get in and maintain. Harvesting was difficult, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to grow a ton of tomatoes if you can't get in to pick them. But anyway, this one here is a Sun Gold, a kind of a well-known classic, very sweet cherry variety. One of these because, again, they're typically very prolific. Then this one is another cherry, black cherry, which is one of our favorite varieties. They produce these really cool purplish, very dark red fruits. Again, a very sweet variety. And one more of those. And I put these into the ground Easter Sunday about a month ago. We had kind of a delayed start to actually getting plants outside this year. We just had a very um, atypical cool and wet spring that kind of delayed our garden start this year. All right, moving on. More indeterminates. Got the San Marzanos, a really great, highly well-known paste tomato. In fact, this whole row of tomatoes here are all San Marzanos. This year we're really focusing on the paste tomatoes. We wound up with too many cherry and slicing varieties last year. A family of 3, one of them being a toddler, can just only eat so many tomatoes, as good as they are. And this brings me to my indeterminate tomatoes. These are an experimental variety for us. These are the Rio Grande variety. I selected these, this paste variety, because it is said to be very resistant to blossom end rot and also heat tolerant, which is always critical, as we have tremendously, oppressively hot summers here in the Sacramento Valley. And it's doing great so far. It's encouraging. Already forming some fruit. And again, these have only been out in the wild here for a month. So that is encouraging. And continuing around the horseshoe here, as I call it, a few more indeterminates. 2 up here in the front are more Rio Grandes. These 2 here are a variety called Aroma, not aroma like a smell, but aroma. And I'm just not too confident that these are going to do great. They look wilty and wispy compared to the Rio Grandes. Most of the ones that we planted died in their starter pots. It's seeming like, and I admittedly could be doing something very wrong with these, but compared to the other varieties they have going, they just don't seem to be very robust. I selected these again after research, looking for heat tolerant, blossom end rot resistant varieties, and this came up. So I thought I would give them a try, but they might be a dud. We'll see. In sharing the ends here, going up this trellising system, I have our Boston pickling cucumbers. It's my favorite variety of pickling cuke. I started a bunch of these indoors, and they largely just didn't survive transplant. Squash, cucumbers, etc. They just don't really care to have their roots disturbed, and I think that's what happened. So I replaced with a direct sow, just seeded some right in the bed here. And I'm going to be thinning these. I I try whenever possible to overplant and then thin, knowing that I'm bound to lose a bunch to things like pests, and just other random calamities. One of the mistakes a small space gardener can make is planting just enough for the space, and then what happens when slugs roam through at night and decimate everything. So I like to plant a lot and then thin if necessary. Continuing, this is one of our 3 eggplants. We typically historically have had some trouble with eggplants, so I'm not devoting a ton of space to them this year while we kind of get our eggplant game down a little better. This is a Rhapsody, a known heat-tolerant variety of eggplant. We'll see how it does this year, and continue to research and see what we can do to improve. All right, 2 more San Marzanos right here. And these are 2 of 5 of our favorite slicing tomato, the Cherokee Purple, which is a kind of, the ripened fruits are about fist-sized and have this really nice blend of deep greens and purple when they are ripe. Tremendously sweet, rich flavored tomato. Don't really want to eat any other kind after them. Moving on, we're out of tomatoes, and these are a few hot peppers. The row there on the right are all serranos, and on the left we have cayenne. These were actually doing terribly under the grow lights toward the end, yellow and shedding leaves like wild. So what I did was I cut off the sickly looking leaves. I buried them right up about to the level of the first healthy leaves, and they're really making a comeback. You can see that there's just been a lot of new growth on these, and I'm kind of hopeful that they're actually going to turn around. This here is a potato, Yukon Gold, that has been in the ground. I planted this in January, actually, and just because of how uncharacteristically chilly it was over the winter, it kind of sat dormant and really began sprouting late February, early March. Hopefully, with this and all of our potatoes, yeah, our chicken's going crazy there. If I can get these to live into June, I think that I can get some good sized tubers out of all of our potatoes, and for once kind of harvest something that isn't just little boilers. We really do struggle with potatoes here because it's one of those crops where it'll be killed by frost in the winter, when we do get quite a few frosts over winter, but also it loses productivity and will die in extreme heat, and we have no shortage of extreme heat over summer. A few more hot peppers in the front, a couple of Thai chilies, and a ghost pepper in the back. I'm not really a super hot fan, so I'm growing the ghost pepper, more for the novelty of it. Maybe, I'll see if I can give away the peppers to somebody who's a total masochist or something along those lines. All right, so here I have, and I'll be thinning those, a couple of butterbush winter squash. I'll thin that to 1 for the bed. And behind them, I have started our sweet potatoes. Those sweet potatoes will completely take over this bed by the end of summer. Sweet potato, it's kind of a toss-up here in Sacramento as to whether you're going to get good tubers. Sweet potatoes like hot, humid conditions. We have plenty of heat, don't have humidity. So sometimes, because of this, the tubers are undersized. However, one thing that a lot of people don't seem to know about sweet potatoes is the greens. The leaves are delicious. Sauteed up, they're a great replacement for cooked spinach in any dish, stir fried, mixed into soups, whatever, what have you. Unlike regular standard potato leaves, which are toxic, sweet potatoes are a completely different species. So they are perfectly good to eat. So, rule of thumb, don't eat white potato leaves. Go ahead and eat sweet potato leaves. And moving on, compost bin and back fence. This is where I have seeded overseeded our asparagus beans, also known as yard-long beans. These are a great substitute in hot climates for green beans. Green beans really don't do well once the temperature goes above 90. But asparagus beans are heat lovers, and we usually get tons every year. All through, even through the hottest part of the summer, they're still producing. Flowers bring in lots of bees. It's awesome. So this year I have these in half wine barrels across up against the back fence here, and I'm just sheeping out for the giving them something to climb, and I'm just going to have them go up these stakes here. Another bed with a trellis attached to it for a few more Boston pickling cukes. Got some dill up front, so everything we need for pickles in one bed. There's the bulk of our potatoes here. Again, I'm hoping that these hang on at least through June so that we can get some, an actual good potato harvest for a change. Something really gratifying about growing your own potatoes. Harvesting them is like a little treasure hunt. Always enjoy that. So we'll see on those. 3 more Cherokee purple tomatoes here. Another Yukon Gold potato here. And we get into our bell peppers, mostly bell peppers in this bed. Toward the back, I don't know if it's coming through with the way the shadowing is. These are Shoshito peppers. Our first year growing these. So when you have a small space and you're growing something new, typically we always do just a little bit, to make sure we like it or that it's not impossible to grow in our environment. So again, we're gonna see how that goes. Back to this back bed here. 3 of my favorite variety of winter squash. This is called Golden Nugget. So these are a bush variety. They're actually a Peppo variety, Cucurbito, or Cucurbita. I butcher the Latin names all the time. Peppo, which Peppos are mostly summer squashes. Acorn squash are also a Peppo. But these, allegedly, the story is they were developed to replace sweet potato in places that have too cold and short growing seasons to grow sweet potatoes. And honestly, the sweetness of the squash that is produced is pretty close. It doesn't taste exactly like sweet potato, but it's as sweet. And they produce really fast. The fruits will be small, baseball sized to softball sized, deep orange with kind of whitish orange stripes, and the harvest within usually like 90 days of planting. You'll get fruits on these. And this is our primary planter full of bell peppers. Last year we did okay on bell peppers, but historically they are a bit tricky for us. They affected by blossom end rot a lot for us. But we did have a decent harvest of them last year. All right, so the corner bed here. This is where I have an experimental variety for me. This is Seminole pumpkin, another winter squash variety. It originated in Florida, so it definitely would have the heat tolerance. But again, we don't have humidity like Florida does, so the lack of moisture in the air for most of the year here, that's kind of the wild card. These weren't looking very good right after transplant, so I kind of doubled up and I planted a direct sow seed right next to each of my transplants, just in case. So, if the ones that I transplanted died, I would have a direct sow that would come and replace it. But everything's now suddenly doing well. It's no more yellow. Everything's back to a nice deep green. So I might have to get in and thin, or I might just get lazy and let it all go. Let the plants kind of compete. Give it plenty of fertilizer and see what happens when you have 12 vining squash plants in a 6x6 bed. Um, you know, Sometimes it's fun to see how things just kind of turn out when left to their own devices. The system that I have kind of rigged up here to control them, I'm calling it a squash cage. It's not really a cage because it's just a bunch of ropes strung around posts. My idea is as these vines grow and begin to spill over the beds, I'm going to start training them, affixing them to grow up the ropes that I've strung between the posts. I think that'll work well to keep them contained and keep them from taking over the entire yard. but in retrospect, I'm wishing that I had obtained some taller posts. They're 8 feet, and the bed itself is about 24 inches, so that's really only 4 feet of height to grow. And apologize for all the noise. We do unfortunately live in a very loud neighborhood that is seemingly populated only by people whose personality trait is make their cars loud on purpose, and also airplanes. So if I get drowned out, I do apologize. Anyway, moving onward, have some mint in the black bucket there, and some oregano that hopefully will just take over this entire planter, and we'll have no shortage of oregano. And we have our 2 zucchini plants, which was about, I would say that it's 1.5 too many zucchini plants for us. Anybody who has any experience with backyard gardening knows that zucchini is prolific and it can actually be tough to keep up on, especially when you're a bit about zucchini. I like it in some stuff, but for the most part, to me, it just is a kind of a filler flavor sponge thing that gets tossed into dishes, and I'm largely unenthusiastic about it. But I do like it thin sliced on a pizza, I found. So that'll be nice, fresh during the summer. And we are back to where we started. The only thing left here is the Armenian cucumbers. And like the other cucumbers, the Boston pickling, these didn't transplant so well, but and I had to direct sow. But luckily, Armenian cucumbers are another heat-loving variety. So I think the stuff that I've direct sowed here to replace them, it's going to be just fine. Especially once we install all of our shade cloth to take the edge off the sun. I can't say enough good things about Armenian cucumber in hot environments. It tastes just like, to me anyway, it tastes just like your standard English cucumber, whatever slicing variety you pick up at the store. But there's no need to peel it. It's a very low seed variety, and it's great for pickling, slicing. No need to struggle with stuff that doesn't grow here very well when an alternative works and tastes just fine. This one here is actually doing really well. This is one of the transplants that made it, and seems to be thriving. And of course, I'm going to train it up this trellis as it grows. And finally, I'm really happy with this bucket of sage that's gone to flower. It's just really great to look at. And also, right now, this is the only thing that's drawing in pollinators. The bees and hummingbirds and stuff have been pretty active here. So, in fact, I'll try to zoom in on our little honeybees at work here. All right, and that's a start. If you're one of the dozen people who happen across this and like it, thank you, and thanks for watching to the end my unscripted, unprofessional, rambling garden intro. Have a good one.